Story 1. Hide the Night 17. When I was growing up very young, my bed used to face the hallway out of my bedroom. At the end of this hallway was a bathroom. Every night down this hallway, figures would walk by, stop and wave, then walk directly into the bathroom. These figures were things that I knew but didn't know. Sometimes it would be Ernie from Sesame Street. Other times it could be a black, odd creature that I had never seen before. But they always would stop, look at me, then continue down the hall. Every night also my mom would come and tuck me into bed. This was a clockwork routine you do to your kids. Bedtime story, kiss, tuck in, good night, etc. One night my mom didn't, and I remember calling her over and over again. Finally, after calling her, she walks down the hall and into my room. I remember her coming in. She didn't read to me, but she apologized and tucked the sheets in around me. She kissed me goodnight and told me she loved me. When she left the room, she didn't go down the hallway towards the rest of the house. She went towards the bathroom and didn't come back out. I remember sitting there watching the hallway and getting a sick feeling in my stomach. I waited a while, then I called for her. I didn't get a response. I remember getting up and going to the hallway to see if she was there still. She wasn't. I was so freaked out I ran down the other direction of the hallway to the rest of the house. All the lights were off, and I remember running to her room. She was asleep in her bed. I went to sleep with her that night. And in the morning I asked her if she came in and tucked me in. She told me she didn't, and that she was so tired she went to bed also. Here is another incident. This one is really short, sort of, but I remember my heart sinking into my chest and the shock of it. Nothing paranormal had happened to me in a couple of years. I had basically forgotten about most of the things. Fast forward a few years, I'm probably around 8, 9 at this point, I think, but younger than 10. I remember my age because Hurricane Ike had just came through, and we were ripping up our nasty carpet that had water damage. My bedroom has changed rooms, not that this information really matters. I'm at the end of the hallway, closer to the bathroom now. My bed no longer faces the door anymore. I haven't seen the figures in a very long time. For a little more context, the other end of the hallway leads to 2 rooms, our kitchen and formal dining room. The dining room was used as an office since it was more separate from the house. There is a big built-in credenza of a sort separating the kitchen from the dining room. It goes all the way to the ceiling, basically a wall, I guess. Then both rooms connected to our living room. It was pretty open concept for being built in the 80s originally. Anyways, this one involves my mom and I again. Her and I are talking and walking down the hallway. As we walk down the hallway, I'm not looking at her. I was looking at our feet as we walked. We were talking to each other, nothing out of normal. Then we reach the end of the hallway. My mom asks me, "Can you feed the dogs?" And we continue walking out of the hallway and to the right, into the dining room, which has a door to our porch. The porch is where we feed the dogs. I followed my mother's feet into the room that would be closest to the porch to feed the dogs after she asked me to feed the dogs. I'm still looking at her feet as we enter the dining room. We're now standing by the wall that separates the kitchen from the dining room, no longer walking. I don't remember what I said to her. I said something, but I remember hearing my mom's reply from the kitchen. But I was looking at her feet bellow me in the dining room. What happened next was so quick it was over. I remember looking up at this figure, which happened to be a lady. She was dressed really well. I remember her wearing a vintage sort of hat and a really pretty dress. I wish I had more details for her, but in the split second I looked at her, shoulder-checked my vision towards the kitchen to look for my mom, then looked back. She was gone. Story 2. Billy B. Wyatt. My old friend from middle school had a pretty old house that was pretty nicely renovated, along with a really nice basement. My friend would always tell me stories about what would go on in the house. Shadows would dash across the hallways. Random chills, compressed chest feelings, footsteps, and creepiest being floating toothbrushes. Saying that it was his grandma's house and that she still haunts the place. I brushed it off being there a few times before and never really seeing anything. We had a sleepover one night and slept in the basement where we had a blast playing video games all night long and just being kids. I was an early bird, so I woke up around 6 a.m. and not wanting to disturb anyone, I walked upstairs to just relax and just do my own thing. I was on the couch for a little while when I started hearing the plant to my right rustle quietly, which I ignored until it was unbearable to listen to when I looked at it. it stopped moving. I looked back down at the book I was reading when it rustled again this time, not stopping when I looked at it. I then heard creaking, and the lights above the kitchen table started swinging back and forth, and the plant was still vigorously shaking. I decided fuck this and threw my book down and ran to the basement when I started to run. There were another pair of footsteps sprinting right behind me. I ran downstairs where it sounds like the steps stopped at the top. My buddy was now awake, asking why I was so loud. I told him what happened, hoping to get "It's probably just you scared or something." Instead, he calmly explained, "That's why I decided we should sleep in the basement. When my grandma was still living in this house, this basement wasn't here, so she has never came down here." I went there again a good amount of times due to the fact we were good friends, where I experienced whispering and chills. Nothing as intense as what I experienced then. He still lives with his parents there and tells me she's been getting more aggressive to the point the whole family experiences stuff. I'm thankful I saw her when she was more chill. Horror Story 3, Lao Wings. I'm not a superstitious man at all, but this is the one story that I cannot explain. I was spending Christmas with a mate's family at their holiday home, which was in the middle of nowhere in the bush. There was about 10 of us with 2 of the uncles, who would be turning up the next day. Anyway, the place that we were staying in was old. I'm talking at least 150 years old and was likely used by some of the first white settlers to Australia. In one of the rooms was this old closet-type thing. Think of the wardrobe from Beauty and the Beast. And that was the room that the youngest was going to be staying in because it had a single bed. The youngest kid was about 5 years old and was the son of one of the uncles that would be turning up the next day. So anyway, I was walking around the house when I heard the kid talking to someone in the room. I thought that someone was there. So I walked in and said, "Hey, who are you talking to?" And the kid replied, "I'm talking to Charlie. He lives in the closet. He is my friend, and we are going to play more later." Naturally, I thought it was just him playing around and making an imaginary friend. So the next day, when we were having lunch and the uncles turned up, I said to him to tell his father about his friend. When the kid said, "Oh, that's just Charlie, we are going to play later one," the father grabbed his arm and said in a kind of panicked tone, "Where is Charlie and what does he look like?" The kid responded, "He lives in the closet in my room and he has this long coat on." Both of the uncles jumped up, ran into the room, dragged the closet outside and set it on fire. We all then left really quickly. I asked them both WTF had just happened, and they said, "We used to play with Charlie as well when we were boys, and he always tried to get us to come play with him in the bush away from the house. So, whatever it was that happened, it was enough to scare the shit out of 2 grown men. When one of their sons mentioned an imaginary friend with the same name who lived by the closet." Story 4. Melly 0515. Back in 2016, I was a sophomore in college and a friend and I were on campus late at night studying our asses off a week before finals. We were both fairly high-achieving students and desired to perform well and ended up losing track of time. Before we knew it, it was around 3 a.m. Neither of us lived on campus and we both had to drive home. This wasn't too uncommon for us, though. We typically found ourselves studying late at night and then driving home around or after midnight. To set the stage a bit and give some reference for the locations of things, at the time, I lived about 20 minutes north of campus with my parents, and my friend lived about 20 minutes east of campus with his parents. Therefore, we basically had to drive in opposite directions once we left campus, due to the orientation of the streets in that area. After leaving, I got into my car, turned left out of campus, and began driving home while my friend turned right, and I eventually saw his taillights disappear in my review mirror when he got far enough away. This late at night, there is very little traffic in our area, if any at all. After about 5 minutes into my drive, I got to a stop sign at a dead-end street where I could turn left or right. I always turn left here to continue my drive towards home. And since I'm not expecting to see any traffic, I do one of those slow rolls and start to continue through the stop sign when I see headlights to my right coming towards me. So I come to a complete stop, still behind the stop sign in a normal place to stop and not at all out into the street. And this big black truck slowly rolls through the intersection at around 510 mph. This in itself is already weird because the speed limit for that street is 45 mph. But I didn't really care too much and the slow speed really allowed me to get a good look at the truck. Like I mentioned, the truck was big, like a Ford F-250 but jacked up pretty high. Since there was a street light at the intersection, I could tell that the truck was black, and it had a big silver toolbox semi-built into the bed. This truck would have been very distinguishable, even in heavy traffic. There's basically no mistaking a truck like this for any other type of vehicle. So after it slowly rolled through the intersection, I took another look in both directions to make sure I could safely turn, and then turned left, following the truck. As soon as you make that turn, you immediately start going up a hill, leaving you unable to see any traffic beyond the peak of the hill. But after you get to the top, the road flattens out and you can see everything for about 2 miles ahead of you. I'm just behind the truck when I see it crest the top of this hill and then disappear down the other side. Not even 10 seconds transpire by the time I make it to the top of the hill, but when I can see the rest of the road in front of me, the truck is gone. In fact, there's no traffic anywhere near me except for what looks like a set of taillights at the next stoplight about a mile down the road. Initially, this really spooked me because I couldn't wrap my head around it. But then I just figured that the truck must have quickly turned into one of the immediate side streets and into a garage or something. Most of the area immediately surrounding campus was fairly residential. So I just continued on and tried not to worry about it. As I kept going, the next stoplight I was approaching had been red the entire time, with just that one car still sitting there. I got about 500 feet away when I finally realized that it was not a car. It was a big black truck, a big silver toolbox in the bed, and jacked up really high. The same fucking truck. Now I am properly terrified about what is going on with this truck. It would have been impossible for it to have gotten to that light in the 10 seconds that it took me to crest the hill behind it. Even if it was a damn race car, it couldn't have gotten there that fast. This is a 4-lane road with 2 lanes on either side. I cautiously pull up next to it, hoping that I can just sort of book it when the light turns green and get ahead of it and be done with it. But I don't pull up all the way. I stay back just a little bit because I'm spooked and don't want whoever is in that truck to look over at me in my car. When I get close enough, I try to see inside their windows as best I can, but it's a little too dark and their windows seem to be tinted, so I couldn't make out anyone in there. When the light turns green, I just go. The truck also begins driving, but slowly again. I begin pulling away and feeling better, so I take my eyes off the truck's headlights and my mirror. This part of the road begins going steeply downhill, and at the bottom of the hill, about 1,500 feet on from the top, is another light where I turn right. So I get over into the right lane, and as I'm doing so, I look into my mirrors to make sure the truck hasn't gotten any closer, and thankfully it hasn't. It had stayed about 1,000 feet behind me, and as I'm looking at it, the headlights vanish. Actually, to be more specific, the truck vanished. There were streetlights lining both sides of the road we were on, so it was pretty well lit at this point. For those of you who have driven at night, if a car is behind you with their headlights on, you know that you can't really see any part of the car besides their headlights. But if their lights aren't on, and there's enough ambient light around, you could see the rest of the car, so when I saw the headlights go off, I was fully expecting to see the truck still there, now lit up by the streetlights. But when the lights disappeared, so did the truck. No side streets it could have turned onto, no gaps in the light where it could have been hiding, and no rational explanation that I could come up with to explain this situation. I am now shaken to my core. Too many weird things have just happened to me, so I just pull off the road a bit and sit there. While I'm trying to process everything that just happened, I get a call from my friend who I was just studying with. When I answer the phone, he is hysterical, yelling about some truck that just almost killed him. I finally get him to calm down a little bit, and he tells me his story. When we left campus, he turned right and was driving towards a well-lit intersection. The light was green, and he needed to turn left. So, with no visible traffic in the area, he began to turn. As he was going, a truck going about 70-80 mph flew through the intersection from the direction he was turning, running a red light, and nearly hitting his car, which would have likely killed him. He and the truck are honking their horns incessantly, and both vehicles have just came to a stop at this point, apparently rattled from what just happened. After catching his breath and gathering his thoughts, my friend said that since he was not hurt, and it was already so late, he just started driving and continued on home, presumably just wanting to be done with that situation and go to sleep. However, almost immediately, He noticed that the truck was turning around in the intersection and now coming up behind him, quickly. He said he sped up, now going about 60 mph to get away, but the truck got to him unnaturally quickly and pulled up alongside him. He could now clearly see the vehicle. A large, highly jacked up black truck with tinted windows and a silver toolbox in the bed. My heart fucking sank. But I haven't said anything yet and waited for him to finish talking. He continued, saying that after the truck drove alongside him for a few seconds, he began to slow down and the truck continued on, eventually turning down a side road and disappearing. I couldn't speak. He noticed that I wasn't saying anything and said to me, "Hey, look, it's all right. I'm not hurt or anything. Just a little unnerved from that experience and wanted to let you know what happened in case I see that truck again or if I don't make it home or something." Then he laughed because obviously he was trying to make light of the situation. When I didn't laugh, he asked if everything was all right. I said to him, "Tell me again what that truck looked like." Confused, he told me again. And again he said it was a large, overly jacked up black truck with tinted windows and a silver toolbox sorta built into the bed. I asked him if he was 100% sure and told me, "Yeah, absolutely positive. This isn't really a truck that you'd forget seeing." Why? I told him everything that I just went through, with the exact same truck. He didn't say a word. I finished by saying, "What the fuck is going on with that truck? Is it just out harassing people?" And without hesitation, he said to me, "That's not possible. Why are you fucking with me?" I said, "What? You just get done telling me your crazy story, but then have the audacity to say that I'm making this up. Just to fuck with you? Why would I do that?" He clarified by saying, "No, I mean that's physically impossible. I called you immediately as soon as I saw that truck pull away and turn down the side street." Story 5, Combination Sudden, 8-town. I'm an officer in the Army. 2 years ago, I was doing a week-long duty securing some town, received some intel which required us to be there. Anyway, me and my friend were assigned to the night patrol. Somewhere around the middle of our first patrol, we reached a part of the town, which was extremely creepy. From our right, we had a construction zone, with a creaking tin door which frightens you every now and then. And from our right, an abandoned house looks as if its renovation stopped at the middle. Suddenly we heard a noise we thought was coming from the construction zone, as if someone is hiding there. I was instantly turned my rifle flashlight on and started scanning the area. It's the middle of the night, we just heard a noise of someone hiding in the construction zone. I scanned the ground and my flashlight stops on a doll. A fucking doll. The kind of dolls you see in horror movies. I literally almost shit my pants, but it wasn't the end. Eventually the sound we heard was nothing, but we knew we need to do that patrol in the very next night again. Tomorrow has arrived and we found ourselves on the night patrol again. Reaching again to the construction zone area, trying to find the doll in advance to know it's still there. Just this time it was facing the other way around. Again, just like in horror movies. Every fucking night, the doll was facing the other way, but by far the most paranormal, scaring moment was at the very last day of the duty. We went to our last patrol, happily knowing we will never need to see that fucking doll again. Same ceremony again, pulling my rifle, lighting the area, searching for the doll. But this time, she's gone, as if swallowed by the earth. In the very moment we realized the doll is gone, we heard another noise coming from the construction zone behind us. This time it was definitely a sound of a human being. We raised our weapons, alerted, as the noise intensified. Longest 30 seconds in my life. It sounds like he's getting near. Me trying to figure what I'd prefer to see, a terrorist or a demon holding the missing doll. The man gets near without us seeing him. We unlock the rifle safety, ready to take a shot, and a second before that, a man with a dreadlock wig and a ukulele comes out of the construction zone, drunk, playing and singing in the middle of the night. Probably was a local resident. The most bizarre week of my life. Story 6. Stripper Fairy. My dad grew up. Reichers worked in a suburb that was rumored to be haunted. Apparently in the late 40s, early 50s, all the residents in a large nursing home mysteriously died. I cannot find any record of this, but my dad vividly recalls the day it happened. The office building my family owns is about 200 meters away from the old nursing home. I about 7 years old and was in my dad's office late at night when I saw an extremely pale man walking up and down the small alley next to the building. He was wearing a trench coat and a hat, kind of like a stereotypical detective outfit. I freaked out and ran screaming to my dad, who was utterly unfazed. He asked if he was wearing a trench coat and then explained he saw the same man every night, he worked late, and that he was a ghost. Around 5 years later, a house one property down goes on the market. My parents go off and talk to the agent, and I'm left walking around the house. The second bedroom on the right felt strange. It had a door that I assumed led into a bathroom or another room, yet there was no way that was possible. The door wouldn't open, and on the other side of the wall, there was no door. The strangest was a tall wooden wardrobe on a diagonal in the corner of the room. I go to exit the room, yet as I pass that wardrobe I suddenly become freezing cold, as if I'm standing in an ice-cold wind. I feel almost paralyzed and as if time has completely stopped. I slowly feel two very cold bony hands make their way up my back and wrap around my neck. I start to feel like I'm choking as the hands slowly get tighter, as something whispers "leave" in my ear. Very suddenly I feel the hands pull away, and I have never run from a place faster in my life. I ran outside and off the property and felt utterly winded and still freezing despite it being a very hot day. I felt as if I was standing in that room for hours when it was probably under a minute. Later that day, my dad refused to make an offer on the house and said he could never live there. After visiting the basement, he firmly believed that someone had died down there. He was the only one who believed what happened to me and told me to never go there again. My mom didn't think I was lying, but has never been able to understand the idea of ghosts, but has always believed that my dad and I can see them. I will never go into that house again. It's one of the oldest in the area and I think was built in 1937. The family that brought it when we looked sold it after 2 years for way below asking. It was for sale last year too, but no one wanted to buy it. Years later, I still get chills and feel like I'm in danger whenever I tell this story. I have seen countless ghosts on the beach, side of the road, balconies and houses. I regularly see the ghost of my dad in his office and our old and new house. I even seem to be able to have small conversations with him if I try hard enough. I'm not really sure why I'm able to see ghosts or why I see more and more as I get older. Story 7, ADHD. So the apartment building I live in is right next to an old abandoned hospital. For context, when we first moved here, there was this guy who used to hang out in there. He's going through the side door a few times a week, but we haven't seen him for almost a year. I'm not sure what was going on with him, but he would make unusual noises sometimes. I just figured he had some sort of mental disorder or Tourette's. I mean, whatever, he wasn't bothering anyone. I figured it wasn't my business anyway. Last week I had the blinds open and I was standing about 3 feet away from the window that has a clear view of the door he used to go. There is a small yard between the two buildings, and there is a door into our apartment building on that side. It looked like the aforementioned young man walked by, but instead of walking from the parking lot to the side door to the old hospital, he, or someone else who looked like him, was walking along our apartment building about 2 feet from our window. It's not unusual for people to walk by there going in and out the side door, but if it was him, he never went into our building. So I walked over to the window, which took 1 second, and when I looked out of the window, no one was there. I also didn't hear the door to our apartment building shut. It's quite loud, so if someone is leaving the building, I would have heard it. And there's nowhere else to come from because the yard is enclosed. I just can't explain how I saw someone walk by and they seemed to just disappear. I'm sure there is a logical explanation, I just can't think of it. The way it's set up, there are 2 windows on the corner of our apartment there, so if they went to the right in front of the building, I would have seen them. If they continued straight to the parking lot, I would have seen them. If they went left, it's really open, so I definitely would have seen them. And there was nowhere for them to crouch down and hide because the windows are kind of low, and the bushes around the building are pretty small. I don't know. My son saw him walk by too and was like, "What happened?" So I know I wasn't hallucinating. Story 8, Calvin Crack. I've had many experiences, but the one which always comes to mind is this. I was sleeping in the guest room at a house my mom was living at with her fiancé. Beautiful old historic home in Southern California, built in the 20s or 30s and well kept. I am having a lucid dream, so fully aware of my surroundings. I'm on a grass field that seems to extend as far as the eye can see in every direction. The scene is populated with various old friends and new, but there's a girl there who I don't recognize. Everyone's having a great time. Suddenly, the peaceful scene is shattered when this unfamiliar girl falls to the ground and starts convulsing like she's had a seizure. Everyone in the dream runs over and surrounds her on the ground. I get close to her and ask what's wrong, and she replies, "Watch out for that lady," and points at the sky. I turn to look up and am immediately awakened in the guest room, and I can feel a presence hovering over me. I can also see it, and it appears to me as the apparition of a giant eye. And it is a female energy. I'm at first paralyzed with fear, but slowly sit up a bit in bed, never taking my eyes off the giant floating eye. It stays there over my body for no less than a minute, maybe 5. Felt like 10. Eventually, the haze of the eye disappeared. I sat up in bed the rest of the night in shock. I had had spirit experiences in the past, including one that was aggressive when I was a child, but never one as long-lasting as this. I believe in the lucid dream I was astral projecting, and my mind came into contact with an entity who haunts that house. The next morning I told my family that I had the most significant ghost experience of my life that night before, and they were definitely creeped out by it. I asked my mom if she'd ever sensed a female entity in the house, and she said that she had not. But then, within a month, my mom called me and said she had a nightmare the night before. In the dream, her fiancé had gotten up in the middle of the night and was standing near a window looking out, and then a woman came running all the way up the stairs, ran into their bedroom and pushed him out the window. I slept in that house many more times after that, but never had anything else shocking happen, although I was always creeped out when sleeping in that room. My mom and her fiancé eventually broke up and she moved out of the house.
Thanks for watching. Don't leave before leaving a like to this video. Also hit the subscribe button to support my work. And as always, have a horrific nightmare, my dear.